And hello again, everybody, and welcome back to an episode of My Isolation Podcast, one of the best me-related podcasts you've probably never heard of until right now. My name is Connor. Thank you so much for tuning in. And today we're talking about Epic Mickey, but not the game Epic Mickey, the movie Epic Mickey, or rather, would it make a good film? Basically, uh, yeah. So Epic Mickey, the remaster just came out last week. I haven't bought my copy yet, but I'm going to be buying a copy soon. Not because I'm a fan of the original, I never played the original, but it's been a game that I've always been quite fascinated about. So I'll be picking up that. But luckily, my guest today has actually played it. His name is also Alex, but this is not Onel. It's actually a completely different Alex. So introduce yourself, I guess.
Hi guys, my name is Alex. Me and Connor have been friends for quite a while now, and as Connor said, I do indeed have the original Epic Mickey on my Wii. In preparation for this, I kind of hooked it back up again, and played through like a little bit of the game, just kind of trigger some memories of mine. Obviously, like Connor said, though, we're going to be talking about the movie or potential movie rather than the game today, though.
Yes, this idea came about. I'm guessing, Alex, you know what a scooper is, right? Like in the film industry, people who try and drop scoops on like upcoming film
Yeah,
projects and stuff. So there's
insider
a
kind of info. Yeah.
yeah. I put insider in quotes because a lot of them just make predictions and they
Yeah.
don't actually break any news. um, but yeah, so reason why this came about actually was because there's I believe it's a Twitter page called the Disneysider. It's like a scoop who dumps Disney news and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And they put a tweet up saying that that Disney were working on a Kingdom Hearts film,
Mhm.
and that kind of got me thinking. What about Epic Mickey? Because that was a few months ago, and obviously the remaster got announced a few months prior to that. I just thought, why not Epic Mickey? I mean, that would make a great film, to be honest. I think. I don't know about you, but I do think that it would actually make a
Yeah, I
solid
mean,
film.
I think definitely the the concept of the game, obviously, when the game first came out, is definitely one of the darker kind of Mickey Mouse related kind of things in the industry. Obviously, before it's always been very like family friendly, very kind of children oriented with like their movies and TV shows relating to him and games as well. But definitely they went for a few more kind of adult themes with Epic Mickey. And so it's always been kind of a very interesting one. It's what kind of brought me to the game originally in the first place.
Yeah, it's a game I've always been quite fascinated by because I used to. Do you ever collect those Nintendo magazines back in the day, the official ones? Oh, no.
I wouldn't say collected, but I definitely have my fair few. Fair few, yeah.
Yeah, I remember they did I think it was they did a preview for Epic Mickey, but they had this really cool cover for
Mm.
it as well. So ever since then, and it's a game I've always been quite fascinated by, and I've always wanted to play it, but I never got the chance. But no, it's always been a game I've been fascinated by, and ever since that Kingdom Hearts scoop, let's say,
Mm.
I've always thought maybe it could make a good film. And because obviously it's a much more darker, more and a much more kind of slightly grittier version of Mickey Mouse. I mean,
Mm.
I'm guessing you took a look at the concept art, original concept art of the game. I sent it to you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I took a look through those photos. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the game didn't quite turn out, as I wouldn't say gruesome, but as creepy as some of those
Mm,
concept arts are. There's the interesting thing I think about the concept art, the original concept art, is that you see the pictures that are kind of like in color seem
yeah.
a bit less kind of dark than like some of the early like sketches and stuff,
Mm,
like the one of Goofy and stuff.
yeah.
Very like kind of, I know obviously it's a bit of a joke game at this point, but the Five Nights at Freddy series
Yeah. Yeah.
um, gave me vibes of that, and especially some of the other kind of like creations that they have, very kind of like disturbing in a way. Uh, yeah, especially for like a game which was designed for kids, obviously. Or not for kids necessarily just, but obviously, it's a beloved
Mm,
children's character. So it
yeah.
was interesting seeing it associated with that kind of mentality. And I wonder if there was an original kind of plan to make it more of a game for older people,
Uh,
rather than, yeah.
actually, the original reason why those original sketches are so out there and so dark and so terrifying. Is actually because I think Disney were approached to do the game to make the game in 2004. Because obviously they even back in 2004 they were pitching it as kind of a more dark, slightly darker Mickey Mouse
Yeah.
kind of game. And so people at Junction Point were like, well, how far are Disney actually going to let us go when you say dark, gritty Mickey Mouse game? How far, like, the folks at Disney will actually let us get away with? So that's actually why they drew those original drawings, as creepy as they are, because they wanted to see how far Disney would let them push it.
Mm.
It's kind of funny when you think of, if you think, imagine yourself as a Disney executive, and
Mm.
and and like you see those drawings, just like, what the fuck are you on?
Yeah, literally, literally. I mean, it would have been interesting to really kind of see them completely push the boat out and where it would have ended up. Um,
Mm.
and I mean, obviously, there are kind of games that aren't obviously Mickey Mouse for copyright reasons.
Yeah.
But a game that I've played through in recent memory is Bendy and the Ink Machine.
Okay.
And that is obviously, a character that is, again, for copyright reasons, not Mickey Mouse.
Mm.
But obviously, he's got the kind of black and white, very kind of small, very similar designs, obviously. They're
Yeah.
obviously playing off that. And that is a horror game. And
Okay.
that is, I mean, obviously the kind of gameplay of it is, I mean, obviously there's the kind of ink aspect to it,
Yeah.
similar to the, obviously, Mickey or the paintbrush. But obviously, it's not quite that kind of, the gameplay isn't similar in that kind of way, but definitely with the characters, I could see it happening, an
Mm.
actual Mickey horror game.
Well, we've got Mickey Mouse horror films now because the Steamboat Willie design is now public domain. So
Yeah, I mean, there's already, some, I'm not sure if they're all jokes, but there are obviously some, like, people are making film DVD covers and like film posters for that already. I've seen online.
oh god, it's going to be interesting because obviously Winnie the Pooh's back in public domain now. And he's already been getting some horror films,
Yeah,
which is
I've heard.
I've heard they're really bad, but like I kind of want to check them out just out of curiosity though. I
Yeah,
think that
same. Yeah, I can't say I've seen any yet, but yeah, it would be
yeah.
entertaining.
Yeah, but yeah, no, the original release.
Mm.
That's such a tongue twister. Yeah, obviously it was quite dark and everything like that. They brought
Mm.
back Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, who hadn't been seen
Yeah,
anything in years.
I mean, he is obviously a very key component of the game.
Oh yeah,
Um, and again, I think it was the right choice because I think he really was kind of perfect kind of encapsulation
yeah,
of what they needed for the character. Because I think having a character that's similar to Mickey in so many ways,
yeah.
but not quite Mickey,
Mm.
um, was a really interesting part of the game, and it gave him a lot of kind of characterization as well.
Yeah, I definitely, yeah. But yes, obviously the history. We're talking about the history of the original game.
Mm,
So obviously you've got some really fond memories about the game and everything like that.
mm.
Do you think it would make a good film adaptation then, or do you think?
I definitely
Uh,
think the the concept as a whole, I think,
mm,
can definitely make a good movie. I think the idea of Mickey in kind of a darker kind of light than we've seen him before.
yeah,
I think that's obviously something that it's a new concept, and then I think also the kind of the painted world kind
yeah,
of aspect of things as well could yeah, I think it could really make an interesting movie. Not sure if you could kind of go based off of the. Um, I think you could definitely take the concept of the game,
mm,
but I think obviously it would be pretty hard to make a one-to-one uh, of the game. Like if you
yeah,
were to copy the exact kind of game to
mm,
movie, I'm not sure if that would
yeah.
work necessarily.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think the morale system from the game could be implemented
Mm.
well into a film. I can't lie about that. But yeah, so I mean, because it would be an interesting one, because obviously now we've got game studios actually getting involved in the movie adaptations of their properties. So obviously, you
Mm.
had Mario Bros. Movie last year. Nintendo was
Yeah,
massively involved in that film. But even before then, you got PlayStation, because they got their own movie studio now, PlayStation
yeah,
Studios,
of course, yeah.
and they did the Ratchet and Clank film, the Uncharted
Mm.
film, which we saw in the cinema,
Yeah,
which
of course.
I didn't really like, but I think you liked it, or
Yeah, I mean, I think it was an entertaining watch for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing really on the Uncharted games, unfortunately for me. The games obviously topped the movie,
Mm.
but still, yeah, I think it was an interesting concept, and I think it's kind of, yeah, as you said, it kind of is part of the growing video game to movie kind of concept.
Yeah, and because obviously we've had Disney make movies about video games before. We had Tron, the Tron movies.
Mm.
They're not based on a game, but they're about video games. And obviously we've had them do video game adaptations before, like they did that god awful Prince of Persia film back in 2010
Oh god, yeah, I've
with
never
Jake
seen it, but
Gyllenhaal.
I've heard horrific things about it.
Yeah, yeah, it was with starring Jake Gyllenhaal, which
Mm.
was not great. Yeah, so they've had done that, but it's definitely done a film adaptation on a game that they've made themselves, like based on their own properties. So I think that would be
Mm.
a very interesting approach for them to go. It'd be an interesting take of them to go, and they could even, maybe they could go back and do other ones. Like maybe they could do a Kingdom Hearts film. I don't know how you would do it, but that would be interesting. Because as well, the thing with Mickey Mouse is that I feel like, particularly nowadays, I could be wrong. So well, actually, before we get into that, what would you say is
Mm.
your overall opinion with Mickey Mouse as a character? Like, what's your own personal history with him?
Well, I mean, to be honest, that's what was quite interesting about Epic Mickey to me.
Mm,
Um, like in the first place, when I was younger, so I got it pretty soon after release. I forget exactly when that was. But to be honest, I never had like Disney Channel growing up or anything like that. So I never necessarily uh, like watched any of like the Mickey Mouse TV shows. I wouldn't even
mm,
say I really watched any specific Mickey Mouse movies. Obviously, I watched kind of like Disney movies, obviously,
yeah.
but none really like that were kind of like Mickey Mouse based, really. So I wouldn't say that I really kind of had much interaction with the character when I was younger. But then, yeah, so the Wii version of Epic Mickey was my first kind of real interaction with any kind of Mickey media.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, it was an interesting, obviously, first look. And there isn't really, like I said, anything in the kind of Mickey sphere, I guess, that's
mm.
that similar to Epic Mickey, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Mickey Mouse though is that for me, he was just kind of always there. Like I watched a couple of his shorts and stuff
Mm,
like that, and I used to watch House of Mouse a lot.
mm,
I also didn't have Disney Channel at the time, but I used to have really basic cable in Australia, and they would play a lot of Disney cartoons. I think there was
yeah.
one of the channel Prime would have every Saturday morning they'd have a segment called Saturday Disney, and they'd have Disney cartoons playing like
Okay, cool.
that whole morning,
Mm,
and and he was always he was always there, but like he never really made that much of an impact on me.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Mm,
think the other characters that was around him, like Donald Duck and Goofy, they definitely made a much more impact on
mm,
me than Mickey Mouse did. You have films like a Goofy movie, for example,
mm,
which really helped develop Goofy more as a character, if anything, and make him
yeah.
more kind of like this single parent trying to look after his son,
Mm,
which is very nice. Which is a very nice touch in those two films.
mm,
And obviously with Donald Duck, you had the DuckTales reboot, which I haven't seen, but I've heard that apparently helps turn him into a much more developed character as
okay.
it goes along, as that series went along. And for Mickey Mouse, though, I feel like he hasn't really been a character the last couple of years. He's always been more of just a mascot, if anything.
Yeah.
Like he's just
Yeah,
been
yeah.
kind of the face that you put on the
Mm-hmm.
branding, and that's kind of just it. Hasn't really had much of a presence, at least in film anyway. I'm sure at like the parks or something like that, he's definitely had more of like you've seen him more often. Like you see the guys in like the Mickey Mouse costumes and stuff like that
Oh, yeah,
around
of course.
parks and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
and everything like that. But
Mm,
I feel like as a character himself, like especially in terms of film, he hasn't really felt like a character, and he just kind of always just pops up every now and then. I know there's been quite a few shorts that have been coming out recently with some new animation style. I can't remember the exact names of them. Apparently they're supposed to be really good. Um,
mm.
but but yeah, I think that if they were to, I think that a movie adaptation of this could maybe help bring him back into the limelight and hopefully like be kind of like a comeback for him and help him develop more as a character. Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's because it's the idea of Mickey, I guess, as a whole is that he's probably I guess the logic is they want to try and find a way to advertise him to a wider audience rather than just kind of a very young audience. Because
Yeah,
I feel like at the end of the day, that is what Mickey kind of is. Obviously, you have like all the TV shows and stuff like that. I think it definitely is marketed more towards like quite young children. And
mm,
so I guess with Epic Mickey as a whole, you could kind of advertise it to a wider kind of audience, maybe a bit of an older audience as well.
mm. Yeah, exactly. And I think a film adaptation of the game could definitely do that.
Mm.
And definitely bring them back into the main consciousness. I wouldn't be surprised if kids today don't even know who Mickey Mouse even is because like I
Yeah.
don't think they've really had much exposure to him. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure if you asked a bunch of like the younger generation nowadays, if held up to a picture of like Elsa from Frozen and Mickey Mouse, they'd probably recognize Elsa a lot more than like Mickey Mouse.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah,
Like
yeah,
they
entirely.
probably look at him and be like, "Who's that again?" And it's like, "Oh no, we got to bring him back into the spotlight. Damn it, bring back the mouse." Honestly, I know he's basically buying stuff. Like buying Bloody Fox and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
but man's set for life. Man's set for life.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of like because you were talking about earlier about the story of the game and how it wouldn't be a one-to-one
Mm.
adaptation. So let's move on to that. Let's talk about the like what the story of a film Mickey Mouse movie could actually be about.
Mm.
I think obviously I mean expecting a one-to-one like retelling of the game, I don't think is really going to work.
Yeah.
Again, like the morality system in the game, that wouldn't really contemplate well. I don't think there's a way
Mm.
you can ever intertwine that into a film.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, the thing that does come to mind is obviously the it hasn't been a hugely popular concept. Obviously, on Netflix, they did the Black Mirror episode where you could like kind of interact with the episode.
oh right, oh yeah,
Um,
I remember that. Yeah,
so I mean, potentially if they could do something like that, obviously that wouldn't really work for a theatre release, but
yeah.
if they're going to
Um,
release it on streaming servers, they could potentially do something like that, I guess.
no, no, it has to be a theatrical release, man. Like,
Yeah,
make it a theatrical release.
I think it has to
Um,
be.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, so obviously with adapting a story, there's going to have to be changes. I know when people hear that, they're going to be like, I don't want
Mm.
changes," and it's like, well, then your film's not going to really work, then is it? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you have to change things in order for it to
Mm.
work on screen. That's one of the main reasons why I'm
Yeah.
not really looking that forward to the Harry Potter HBO reboot thing that they've got
Yeah.
making on.
Mm.
They're like, we're going to be 100% faith. It's going to be a faithful adaptation of the source material, and it's like, well, what's the point of that? Like, I mean, yeah, they cut stuff out of the films, but I feel like they cut a lot of stuff I don't know would really work in a film. They would extend
Yeah.
the runtime quite a lot. Like, oh boy, I can't wait to see the flashback of Ron, why Ron's scared of spiders in Chamber of Secrets. Like, that's gonna be so. That was so important. That was really
Yeah.
important. Oh my god, that was such important information there. But yeah, so obviously there's always going to have to be changes that are going to have to be made in order to do it. So, what kind of changes do you think they would have to make to the story in order for it to work?
I mean, I think that you keep a lot of the main pillars. Obviously, as you said, you can't do the morality kind of system, obviously.
Mm,
But I think you do keep the kind of there's a lot of there that from the game that you can keep.
mm,
I think obviously the fact that kind of Mickey gets transported to another world, I think is a great concept. I think Oswald, obviously as a character, as I already said, I think is great. So I'd love to see him in the adaptation, and then obviously I think the whole aspect of a darker kind of Mickey movie, and also with the kind of grungy kind of mechanical kind of enemies that you face
mm,
throughout like mainly boss fights, obviously. But I really do like that as a concept as well.
mm,
Um, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, you'd need like main inspiration for the character. Obviously, in the game, it's kind of fighting through to restore the world that Mickey destroyed, and then obviously to escape and go back to your world. Um, so it'd be interesting to kind of see the motive. Obviously, as I said, I think having him kind of trapped in another world, it would give him that motivation in the movie.
yeah.
Um, Yeah, and I think maybe I mean, obviously the morality system, obviously you can't implement that as obviously a viewer choice. But I do think it could be an interesting kind of maybe inner monologue for Mickey in a way, like having to choose between, um, him having maybe a conflict about having to choose between like being the peaceful kind of pacifist or maybe kind of, more of the violent kind of, I guess, anarchist kind of side.
Mm. That could, yeah, that could definitely be interesting. I think as well, what you could like, you could obviously have it be kind of more like almost like a commentary about his legacy as a
Mm.
character, as well as the good
Mm.
things it's done, but also like the bad things that it's done. So how he was really successful and he's brought animation to the level that it is today. But how but during that time, a lot of tunes got forgotten and got kind of sent to the wasteland, basically. You could even have it where
Mm.
maybe the wasteland is just where forgotten tunes end up just going. Like maybe it's already like what messed up. Like maybe he didn't cause it.
Yeah.
Maybe he's the
Yeah.
reason why it's
Interesting.
there
Yeah.
because they've all been forgotten because of him, and
Mm.
he kind of has to learn the positives, but also the negatives of what his legacy has done to that world as that he's done.
Yeah. I mean, that's very interesting. Obviously, in the game, um, in the initial kind of opening cutscene of the game, Mickey obviously it is kind of that meta commentary because Mickey does play a character. Like you see, there's a bit when like the calendar starts flipping,
Yeah, yeah.
and it obviously shows all the different kind of Mickey media that's been coming out. So he obviously is playing that himself, obviously as a character in that. So it is kind of meta
Yeah.
in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, and you could even have it where maybe at the beginning you actually do see Oswald get kind of like, well, you could have it where Oswald was the front runner for the mascot, but maybe like the audiences just didn't like him, so they had to kind of get rid of him. And you could even have it where
Mm.
maybe you could even have maybe Walt Disney himself be in the film. Obviously, as animated though, I wouldn't want it to be like the opening segment is like half like live action
No.
hybrid. I'd rather it just be entirely animated.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Maybe you can even have it where he's trying to find Oswald's replacement, and maybe he finds Mickey Mouse like doing like street work and stuff like that. Like maybe he's like doing like 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 tricks on the street and stuff like that to like entertain
Yeah.
people, and he's seeing how people are kind of interested in him and warming up to him, and he decides that's my new mascot. So you can even have maybe throw in something like that where you see how Mickey ended up becoming Disney's mascot and how Oswald kind of just got pushed to the side because people just didn't resonate well. Just didn't resonate well with him.
Mm.
But you could even have it where again, like Oswald generally just doesn't like Mickey Mouse, and everything like that. You could even have
Yeah.
it where obviously it's the Mad Doctor that's the villain in the game, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I think originally Oswald was supposed to be the villain in the game, but I think they
Hmm.
changed that. I think they did change that during development, but I would actually like to see them bring that back. Like maybe have where Oswald is the villain of the game of the films, is the main villain. I think that could be an interesting one where he's kind of like this. Almost like this big kind of boss of the wasteland. Like he rules it all. Like the tunes are scared of him, and you can even have it where Mickey instead of like trying to fight him, tries to resonate with him and tries to bring him back to kind of a better morality, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I do like that concept. Obviously, I think the evil Doctor is a very generic kind of villain,
Mm,
and I feel like especially nowadays, when media has obviously evolved a lot, films have evolved a lot from back in the day.
yeah,
Um, I think that you do need that kind of depth of character, and I feel like you're completely correct in saying that you could get that with Oswald. I feel like,
yeah,
like the evil Doctor obviously is not going to work as a villain,
yeah.
for a movie. So yeah, I think definitely Oswald. I really like the idea of something like him getting pushed to the side, getting shunned by Mickey, and kind of developing a hatred for him. I really like that as a concept, actually. Yeah.
Mm. You could even have it where maybe Oswald is the one that creates the wastelands. So like to give the Forgotten Toons somewhere to go, somewhere to live.
Mm.
But you could even have it where maybe he essentially tricks them into like coming into going there, uh, and and then when they arrive, they become trapped, and then and he just because he's like this big ruler, he wants his own kind of control of everything. So that's kind of his own little world, and eventually maybe he sparks a plan to drag Mickey Mouse to the wasteland. Because obviously in the original game, it's a world created by Yen Sid, who I believe is who is the magician from Fantasia. I think that's correct.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, his character isn't really kind of like yeah, explained that much in the game. Obviously, he's not really in the game that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I believe so. Character model wise, I'd assume.
Mm. Yeah, so would you say? Do you think he should be in it, or do you think, like as you said, because he's not in the game very much? Do you think there's any point having him be in the film somehow, or do you think he should? Do you think it should maybe he should be one of those characters that they should just cut out altogether?
I mean, it's a tough one because obviously he's the one who had the magic ink originally, and it was his
Mm.
magic paintbrush that obviously had the that created the painted world.
Yeah,
Um, so it's one of those situations where obviously the paint being such a big mechanic of the game,
yeah,
you'd obviously have to have Mickey encounter the magical paintbrush somehow.
mm,
So potentially having him, I think, play like at least a minor role in
yeah.
getting Mickey the paintbrush,
Mm.
potentially. But I don't. Again, I don't think like a major role. No, I don't think a major role makes sense for him.
Yeah, I mean, we could even have it where maybe he does create the wasteland, and Oswald just takes it over, and
Mm.
um, and maybe he drags Yinsa down to the wasteland and traps him, and Mickey, and he's the one who actually gives Mickey the paintbrush and kind of just says, you need to save us, save us now."
Yeah. I mean, maybe
Um,
that would make more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could be cool because again, it might be a bit too dark, but I think that's kind of the whole point of the game was to make a more darker, slightly edgier game with Mickey Mouse in it, and I think you could definitely do that for a film and maybe push it slightly further, but not too far to the point where you're getting like a PG-13 rating in a way.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. You need to keep it accessible for all.
Yeah, maybe to like a Don to the point of a Don Bluth movie, an early Don Bluth. I'm like, you ever watched Land Before Time or
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
yeah, like that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I think that could be really cool and really interesting. Again, you have those themes of legacy and everything in there
Mm.
as well. So which obviously could be one of the themes of the film as well, like being a bit about like mainly about his legacy, Mickey's legacy, the highs and the lows, and also like the positives and negatives that came with that as well. And
Mm.
maybe like maybe he tries to do some good in the film, like maybe he tries to make everyone remember who these tunes are who've been lost and forgotten and everything like that. But yeah, speaking of what do you think one of the major themes of the film could be, though? If you talk about themes of potential themes of this movie,
I mean, as you said, legacy seems like a big one, and I agree actually, because I mean, if they are going off this concept of kind of disregarded tunes, I think it does make a lot of sense.
yeah,
Um, Obviously, I think, as I said earlier, I think obviously the morality system, I think you could implement as kind of an inner dialogue for Mickey as a character.
mm,
Um, it's obviously choosing whether to kill or to not kill. Um, and I think that could be quite an interesting moral dilemma, obviously, seeing that, I'm sure his path would be easier through maybe this like treacherous journey of his if he were to just give
mm,
in and just, kill everything that's in his way.
yeah,
Um, Obviously it wouldn't be the morally correct thing to do.
yeah,
So I think that could be quite an interesting monologue and like thinking about maybe how it could harm
mm,
his own legacy, by
yeah,
going through and just killing everything in his path.
yeah, exactly, yeah, and because obviously there's that. Is it called the blot? The big
Mm.
kind of blob of ink that drags them down.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
evil one. Yeah.
yeah, you could even have it where maybe maybe like Oswald created that kind of monster, and that you could even have it where maybe that's how he's kidnapping tunes and dragging them down to the wasteland, like the ones who have been forgotten, because he feels like, well, I was forgotten, so and I have to be here, so you guys can be here as well and all that stuff.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I think you're right though. Like the idea that Mickey, like again, the morality system being in there, where you could have a choice between, particularly at the very end of the film, where maybe he has a choice to
Mm.
either destroy Oswald or try and reason with him, try and find a more civil kind of
Yeah.
peaceful thing with him, and try to maybe even restore Oswald's own legacy in a way and have him be remembered.
Mm.
That could be one of the big kind of again kind of things in the film. I think all these things could help develop him as a character as well. Because as I said before, and he's not really been that for a while.
Yeah.
uh,
I mean, yeah.
yeah, what other themes do you think could play in this film as well?
I mean, to be honest, it would. It's an interesting one. I think we could obviously see. I mean, it's interesting you say using the Oswald creating the blot and kind of using it to kind of kidnap the lost or forgotten cartoons.
Hmm.
Um, it would be interesting to kind of see, maybe he thinks he's too powerful, maybe, and he takes like a step too far, and that's what brings Mickey to kind of try and stop him in the end, potentially.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe he takes a cartoon that is still like kind of beloved, and everyone gets a bit suspicious, maybe.
Mm.
Um, so obviously there'd be the theme of kind of adventure and kind of
Yeah.
an interesting kind of, as we were saying, kind of wasteland painted world, kind of an alternate universe, obviously. And
Yeah.
obviously the themes of kind of you know, being forgotten. I'm sure there are characters, forgotten characters that, even we don't know.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Um,
there
yeah,
was
sorry, go
a
ahead.
I know there was a film, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, that kind of dealt with that as well. That aired on Disney Plus a few years ago. That
Mm.
kind of dealt with being forgotten and everything like that. I think in that film, Peter Pan was the main villain, if you can even believe.
Oh, wow, okay, there you go.
Yeah, he was a grown adult, and he was voiced by Will Arnett,
Mm.
uh, which was interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
Interesting take, and it was interesting that Disney actually allowed them to go that little extra step further, which maybe could make them go a bit step extra further with this film as well. But
Mm.
yeah, I think those themes as well, the themes of adventure and everything like that, I think that those could play well into the film, if they were ever to go ahead and make it. What do you think the tone of the film would be then? Because obviously we're going for they'd have to go for a slightly darker one, wouldn't they? I don't think they can go
Yeah, of
for
course.
yeah. I don't think they couldn't go for like light and fluffy,
Mm.
like they
No,
normally.
I mean, obviously, we're assuming that it's going to take place in like kind of alternate world. I mean, whether it's the painted world that's in the game,
Yeah,
or not. Obviously, it's going to be a pretty dire, dark kind of scenery. Um, and so obviously with that, yeah, you are going to get those kind of darker themes. Um, I think you need to try and find the obviously you need some kind of conflict in the movie. You can't just have it all just dark all the way through, dark doom and
yeah,
gloom.
mm,
Um, so there does need to be that kind of light in the movie as well. But I think it does seem like a really good setting, just like an alternate world where forgotten cartoons are kind of um, living, have been kidnapped to, are imprisoned inside of. It does seem like a really, really interesting concept. And yeah, I mean, obviously it would be darker, but I think it would be very interesting to kind of see that.
yeah. It'd be interesting to see what other characters they bring over, because obviously there's all the old cartoon characters in the game, but you could even maybe bring over a few ones from like maybe the '90s or something
Mm,
like maybe Belle and the Beast in a weird way, or
yeah,
maybe my. Did you ever watch Atlantis: The Lost Empire?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you could bring over. You could even have like Milo in the cast from that and that in from that film, because that one film is quite. It has a cult following, but
Mm.
very much almost forgotten. You could have the characters from the Black Cauldron. I don't know if you ever saw that one.
I did not see that one. No, no.
It's not a very good film. Let's just say that. It was one of the, it lost to the Care Bears movie at the box office when it came out.
Wow.
That's how bad it was. Disney. It was a Disney film that made that the Care Bears made more money than a Disney film, which was interesting.
Well, that's
um,
a yeah, quite
you could have like those characters in there. So you could even like play around with characters that maybe people haven't really talked about. Like maybe even throw maybe a couple of CG characters in there, like the ones from Meet the Robinsons, or
Mm,
like just characters that like maybe from franchises that just have been forgotten,
mm,
not just from the 60s or the 70s, but from even like the 80s or the 90s in a weird way. Um,
yeah. I mean, I think definitely nostalgia is going to be a big theme. Obviously, I don't quite know how I didn't
yeah,
think about that earlier. But yeah, I think playing
mm,
off people's nostalgia of movies that they might have seen growing up, again, movies that we might have seen like from the 90s and maybe even into the early 2000s.
yeah,
And maybe even just some Disney movies that didn't quite hit from the 2010s. I mean, obviously, um, it would be interesting to kind of, with the streaming sphere, with the Disney Plus and everything like that.
mm,
I'm sure there've been a lot of new characters kind of introduced that a lot of people wouldn't even know about. Um,
yeah,
and it would also be interesting to see the kind of different animation styles, obviously, throughout the year. It'd be
mm,
interesting to see, like, maybe they could mix the different animation styles. So, as in, the characters from Atlantis, like you were saying, would keep their kind of original animation style from Atlantis.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Obviously, with Mickey getting constant updates, he'd obviously be like modern CG because he's such a beloved character. Um, but yeah, obviously some of these older cartoons maybe keeping that kind of 2D, kind of almost sketch animation style.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, talking about the animation, let's talk about that for a second.
Mm.
Um, yeah, what kind of animation style? I'm assuming we're going to go with 2D for this film. I feel like if it's Mickey Mouse, we have to go with 2D. We can't do CG. I think.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing would be maybe it is. I mean, if we're going off the fact that he's originally in his own normal world, I guess in quotation marks, you
yeah.
could obviously start that in 3D, and then when you make the jump to the other world, it switches to 2D.
Yeah, so it's
Um,
kind of like a reverse of it. So they
yeah.
normally they would do that, but normally they would do it in reverse. So it's kind of like when they did the was it the second SpongeBob film,
Oh yeah,
where
yeah,
when they went to the real world, they all became like 3D models,
yeah.
3D CGI models, and didn't become 2D in the end.
Mm.
I'm trying to think of another one. There was also that Simpsons Halloween special,
Oh
where
yeah, yeah.
in that 3D space, and he goes from being a 2D image to a 3D image.
Mm.
That could be like again, like it could be like that, but in reverse, because that
Yeah.
could actually make more sense in a weird way when you think about because maybe Oswald wants it to be all 2D animated and everything like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
wants to go back to the kind of good old days or whatever.
Yeah, like you could have where maybe Oswald's kind of stuck in the past, and he
Hmm.
wants he doesn't want everything to move forward. He kind of wants everything to go back to the way it was. You could maybe have it where maybe he could even have it where he kind of he kind of reflects all these woke babies that have been crying woke these past couple of years, being like, oh, let's go back to the good old days. I don't want to move forward. I want to go back to how things used to be and all this other stuff and in the end, you kind of realize how dangerous that can really be because it is quite dangerous to kind of live in the past in a weird way and not
Yeah, of
kind of
course.
move forward. Um, I think that there's been a lot of films that have kind of highlighted the importance of moving on. Like the third Guardians film was kind of about that. Like I think
Hmm.
in the end, where have you seen the third Guardians of the Galaxy film or?
Yeah, yeah. I've seen all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So like obviously they split up at the end, and Peter moves back to Earth, and then Rocket kind of formed his own team, and the others kind of move on from that.
Hmm.
That's kind of that's kind of about moving forward and moving on, and how change can still be good in a weird
Yeah.
way. Um, as for signing off 3D, like is a free like Mickey's a 3D model going to 2D, that could be
Hmm.
interesting. I don't know how I don't know how people would think that would work, but then again, I mean, there is that TV show, Mickey Mouse. I think it's called Mickey's Clubhouse or something like that, where he is a
Hmm.
3D model, quite a creepy 3D model, but still. Uh, but yeah, so like I get, but that does kind of interest me though. Like you say, like they could go back to like like he's a 3D model, like, or maybe in this, at the beginning of the film he's 2D, and then he kind
Mm.
of evolves into a 3D model, and then he kind of goes back to his like 2D look when he goes to the waste when he gets to the
Yeah, I
wasteland.
mean, I was just going to say, I kind of like that concept, seeing him kind of evolve over time, and it would be interesting to kind of see that juxtaposition, obviously, with all these other older characters being stuck with their kind of old models, and yet having Mickey, who's obviously a beloved character, seeing him kind of
Mm.
be upgraded and constantly like kind of remodeled over time,
Yeah.
seeing him being cared for, obviously, and stuff like that. Yeah, I agree.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. I just wondered this just now. But you couldn't have it where maybe Oswald's whole plan is that he wants to drag the whole Toon World into the wasteland. Like that's kind of his main.
Yeah.
That could be like his main goal. He wants everyone to live there, so he can rule over everyone, and kind of
Mm.
be the ruler, and everyone has to kind of look how he wants them to look, and go by how he want and do what he wants them to do, and basically.
Mm.
Kind of like his revenge on the world that kind of forgot him in a weird way. I
Yeah.
think that would be an really interesting and really dark kind of story to give him as a character.
Mm.
But yeah, again, like I think that looking at the art style of the game, particularly the HD remaster as
Mm.
well, which just looks absolutely gorgeous. By the way,
It does. Yeah, it does.
I just played a little bit of the demo for the Switch, and
Yeah.
while there was some jank, as in some performance issues,
Mm.
uh,
Yeah.
it still looked really good. So I think you could definitely get a really good, beautiful looking film, and it would be nice to see a fully 2D animated film again after so long. I can't remember the last time. I think the last time we got one of those was Winnie the Pooh from 2010. That weird Winnie the Pooh film that wasn't a sequel but also wasn't a reboot. It was just kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the very last fully 2D animated film from Disney. Anyway, I think 2D has slowly started making a comeback. What with the Spider Verse films.
Oh, yeah, of
So
course.
you've got Studio Ghibli, who have still been making 2D films,
Hmm.
traditional hand drawn films to this very day, and we also got the Wild Robots coming out. That's actually a 2D animated film that they actually drew. That they actually painted it.
Yeah, I've
Uh,
seen that. Oh, I haven't seen the movie, but yeah, I've seen trailers for that. I've seen it. It's got a pretty much 100% score on Rotten Tomatoes as well. So,
yeah, Yeah, it comes out. It comes out this month actually. Not sure
mm.
when it comes out in the UK. I know it's out in America now, but I think the UK get it a little later, which is really lame. And obviously you have the new Transformers film, Transformers One, which
Mm.
has a quite 2D kind of look to it as well, like a 2D edge kind of look to it, which I think is quite nice actually. So I think 2D has slowly been starting to make a comeback for a while, and I think having a
Mm.
feature length film from Disney themselves, I think could be a really good way to kind of cement 2D back into kind of the industry, and hopefully we can get 2D animation back again. Because I think the thing with 3D animation is or CG animation is that it's still a useful tool. Don't get me wrong.
Mm.
I think everyone's starting to get a little bit bored of it now. I think everything's starting to look the same. If that makes sense. I think there's not really a lot of
Yeah.
and expression with it as compared to
Mm.
2D, where you could make where 2D was a bit more flexible. You can make anything look like anything compared to a CG where everything does again. It kind of just looks the exact same. I mean, we've had kind of experiments like the new Puss in Boots film that definitely experimented mixing the two styles together
Mm.
with their animation style. And you've had the Spider-Verse films, which kind of kicked off that kind of whole kind of trend. But again, you have like Pixar, which kind of just still do that still do CG films to this very day, and they still look nice. But again, they all look kind of the same in a weird way. There's different styles to them.
Mm.
At the end of the day, like we need to go back to 2D, because I think 2D was kind of always more flexible and more expressive and just more unique in a weird way. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think that obviously um, it's kind of what I think as society as a whole. I think yeah, we're seeing kind of that shift to nostalgia, shift to kind of old styles. Obviously, you see there are on like social media and stuff. You see the rise of people using things like digital cameras. A lot of
Yeah,
people starting to use more kind of vintage things like record players coming back into fashion. Obviously,
yeah,
fashion as a whole taking kind of a look back into kind of vintage clothing, kind of thrifting is
yeah,
obviously making like a big comeback. So I think
mhm,
definitely people are liking the kind of vintage aesthetic as a whole of social media. So I think
Yeah.
obviously making that jump back to 2D would yeah, make a lot of sense as well.
Well, I mean, we have a friend who's gotten into photography, who has a kind of a hobby for photography in a weird way. Like he
Yeah, of
buys, like,
course, yeah.
yeah, like he buys like really old cameras and stuff like that. Which is yeah, which is interesting that you say that everything's sort of starting to come back around, and we're starting to kind of go
Mm.
back to kind of these old, almost in a weird way forgotten, forgotten
Yeah, there you
things.
go.
We kind of think this film. Um, but yeah, I think, but yeah, I think having a 2D, completely 2D animated movie, I think would be really interesting and really cool. Going back to
Mm.
Pixar quickly, I'd love to see Pixar do a 2D film. I'd love to see them experiment a little bit with that. To be honest, I think that'd be quite unique. I know they did a 2D short. I can't remember the name of it. It was a short about a cat and a dog.
Mm.
Basically, I can't remember the name of it at the moment. But it was really lovely and really sweet and really wholesome.
Mm.
So they definitely have the power to do it and do it
Yeah, of
well.
course.
I think I'd love to see Pixar have a go at it, and I'd love to see like maybe even Illumination take a stab at it, and have people kind of go back to 2D, but kind of experiment with it a little bit, and let's bring it back completely try and completely bring it back in a weird way. Because
Mm.
again, I think it's a great art form that I think has been in a weird way forgotten.
Yeah,
Up
I
until
mean, yeah, I do completely agree, and I think again that's why it would make sense for kind of that forgotten world in the potential movie. Obviously, yeah,
yeah.
being in 2D.
Mm. Yeah, so I do. Yeah, so I do quite like the idea of so the idea of them starting off a CG and then going back to a more 2D animation.
Mm.
I think would be interesting.
Yeah,
Thinking of speaking of the characters that could be in this film as well. So obviously Mickey Mouse is going to be in this film. Do you think
yeah.
like other characters, like do you think Donald Duck, Minnie Mouse, Goofy should be making an appearance in this film completely, or do you
Um,
think like they should sit it out and just focus completely on Mickey himself?
Potentially in the kind of 3D bit, maybe when they're doing some
Yeah.
character building and some world building to start the
Mm.
movie out. Um, but I think obviously one of the big things about Epic Mickey is they don't make that appearance. Is that it is
Yeah.
him kind of alone in a strange world by himself. So I do think that he should definitely in that transition to the other world. If that does happen, I think he should definitely kind of brave it alone.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely help with his kind of almost his hero's journey in a weird way, where he's kind of about all by himself, and he needs to get back to his world and get back to his friends
Mm.
that he's kind of left behind. And that's kind of his main goal in this film. In this film is to kind of get back to his world, get back to Minnie, get back to just get back to her. And talk about voice actors for a second for this film. Obviously, Mickey Mouse is voiced by, I believe he's voiced by he's got two voice actors currently.
Mm.
Um, that's mainly Brett Ewan, I think that's how you pronounce his name, and then Chris um, Diam and I cannot pronounce his last name, but like he's the second guy that does
Yeah.
it. I think he does the TV series for The Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse, and I think he did that short film Once Upon a Studio. So
Mm.
obviously for Mickey Mouse, you got those two guys. I don't think they would go as far as hiring a celebrity voice actor like they normally would for these films.
Mm.
Because I mean, there was that joke that I think Chris Pratt put made an April Fool's joke
Mm.
last year where he was like, "Oh, guys, I'm the voice of Mickey Mouse in this new film now." Obviously playing on how people got pissed off that he was the voice of Mario and Garfield. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I can't really picture Disney doing that for Mickey Mouse, like having him be voiced by a celebrity voice actor, unless they're actually willing to go that far with it. I mean, could you imagine that though? Like, who would they even get like as a celebrity? I mean, it would be weird.
Oh god, yeah. I mean, the Rock is in absolutely everything now.
The Rock is Mickey Mouse.
That
Well,
would be an
Mickey Mouse.
interesting choice. Interesting casting choice.
The hierarchy of Disney is about to change forever. Um, yeah, that would be an interesting choice for sure. Um, Maybe I don't know the lip. God knows, like Will Arnett. I guess. I mean, he voiced Peter Pan.
Sure.
Chris and Chip and Dale, so maybe. Um, it'd be a weird one. I think it would be one of those ones where you do just stick with the original two voice actors you already have.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I think for like other characters though, I think I can definitely see him casting like celebrities for that, or at least well-known actors as well. Like maybe you could have it where
Yeah, yeah.
like celebrities who have become well-known voice actors, like Ben Schwartz, for example, who voices Sonic in the Sonic films. He's a celebrity, but he's also a very well-established voice actor. I think he's done a lot of
Hmm.
voice work. Even before Sonic the Hedgehog, he was doing a lot of voice work. Then he actually did a voice for the DuckTales reboot back in the day. Um,
Oh,
so
okay.
so like you could get him. Alan Tudyk is a go-to, as usual go-to for that kind of thing. Like he's a celebrity, but he's also done quite a lot of voice work. He's a well-established voice actor.
Hmm.
Mark Hamill, who voices Luke Skywalker,
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah,
Luke Skywalker. He plays Luke Skywalker,
yeah,
but
actor,
he's
yeah.
done a lot of voice work as well. Like obviously the Joker. He did a voice for he voiced Chucky in the Child's Play reboot from 2019,
Hmm.
uh, which was an interesting choice. He could voice Oswald actually. I could actually see him playing a good. If you're going for a more darker tone, I think Mark Hamill would be a good Oswald. To be fair,
Yeah, it's
um,
actually an interesting point. Yeah, yeah, I actually completely agree. Yeah, I mean, I do like the idea of the celebrity approach. Cartoons are sort of immortal. I was going to say,
yeah,
obviously their kind of fate is to be forgotten. I guess,
yeah,
but like, because I was originally going to say, oh, maybe you could have people from around that kind of time
yeah,
when the original cartoon was released, voicing the characters,
yeah,
those specific characters. But obviously, as you know, I kind of thought about it a little bit. And maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think celebrity voice actors would be a good choice. But I feel, yeah, like I don't want to just see, obviously I want to see, talented voice actors and actors,
yeah,
get
yeah,
cast in this role. I don't just want to see, people getting hired for, the sake of having a celebrity attached to the movie.
yeah. Well, I feel like Disney have done a good job picking like decent enough actors that suit the characters well enough. Unlike a lot of studios who tend to just kind of hire who's near a celebrity. Jack Black. Let's get him in there
Yeah.
somehow. Who's now in every video game adaptation ever. He'll probably be in this one if it happens somehow.
I mean, he is good. He is good with his voice. He can do a lot of things with his voice.
Oh yeah, he was a great Bowser. Can't
He
lie.
was, yeah, yeah, yeah. He fit into that role really, really well.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just trying to think about what kind of role he could play in this. I'm sure
yeah,
you. I'm sure you could. I'm sure you could get him in somewhere. To be honest, yeah.
yeah. I mean, maybe he could voice Oswald. Oh no, he could voice like the Mad Doctor. Maybe the Mad Doctor's Oswald's assistant.
If the Mad Doctor is in this, yeah, that would. I feel like that role would probably suit him quite well. To be honest, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think that could be really good.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think. But again, like I do want some good voice actors in there to like help out, like give them that cartoony kind of feel to them. Like like Jim Cummings is Disney's usual go to guy
Hmm.
for voice work. I mean, he voiced a lot of characters. Sometimes he would voice characters like at the same time as well. Like I think there were times like he voiced Winnie the Pooh and Tigger.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, like he voiced both of those characters.
Could be an interesting gag in there somewhere where two characters, because they're old, yeah, they're voiced by the same character
Yeah,
or voiced by the same person. Sorry.
yeah,
So that could be an interesting little
yeah,
gag in the movie, I guess.
yeah. You can even have it maybe when the old characters in the waste time like, oh, they just get celebrities to do it these days. It's so
Yeah.
annoying. Oh, something like that. Maybe even have it where maybe celebrities like play the toon characters, like they get like their likeness like CG'd into them or something into the films or something like that. Where that could be interesting.
Definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, I think for casting wise, yeah, I think again stick with. I think try to stick with as many voice actors as possible. Maybe
Mm.
get the odd celebrity to play like maybe like again like the odd character here and there. Like obviously, yeah, maybe a celebrity for Oswald initially and everything like that. But yeah, I
I,
think that could work. I think again, I try to stick with voice actors mainly. I think don't get too many celebrities. I think stick with voice actors because
I agree. I
they
agree.
need work.
Mm.
Is there anything else you want to talk about with the potential film adaptation? Or
I mean, I think I've kind of covered all of my bases here. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I again really looking forward to it if it is something that's in the works. Obviously,
I, do-
as I
I mean,
said,
we hope it looks like.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we hope it's in the works. We're acting like this is already in the works, but it's not even like I don't know. I mean, could you imagine next year at D23 to actually announce it, and we're like, yes, we're right. We dropped the scoop, guys. We're scooping
we
now.
knew it all this time.
Yeah, yeah, we knew all the time. Scoopers now, mate. I this. Yeah, I wouldn't be. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, after this podcast goes out, like, there's a scooper out there who, like, goes on Twitter being like, "I've heard they're doing an Epic Mickey movie, and there's an Epic Mickey film in development," or
Just
somewhere
watch.
along those lines.
You heard it here first. Yeah.
Just be like, that was our scoop. You heard it here first. But yeah, I think it'd be really interesting. If they did do it and it was successful, do you want them to do the sequel, Epic Mickey 2, The Power of Two? Or do you think they'd leave that one alone?
I guess I mean obviously they are a company at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So obviously depending on the money that it makes, but I feel like it'd be one of those movies that isn't necessarily going to be a massive hit,
Yeah.
but I think will resonate well and will review well. I hope obviously as well. Obviously depends on the quality of the movie,
Well,
but
I mean,
I think the concept as a whole is great.
animation is doing really well for itself at the moment. I mean, you have Inside Out 2, which did really well. Yeah, but
Mm,
the Wild Robots is doing really well in America at the moment, making a lot of money at the box office. Yeah, obviously, Transformers 1's not doing very well, but I think that
yeah,
franchise has been kind of on a steady decline for a while now, with the Michael Bay films and everything like that.
yeah, true.
Kung Fu Panda 4 did really well at the box office at the start of the year. Um, I'm sure Shrek 5 is probably going to do really well when that comes out.
Finally next year, yeah, I'm waiting,
2026,
counting
2026.
the days. Oh,
Yeah.
2026, yeah, good
Yeah,
lord.
I'll get the first trailer next year, obviously, but like 2026 is when it comes out. I think it comes
Mm.
out either the same month or the same week as Toy Story 5. Um,
Wow.
that'll be interesting to see. That'll be very interesting to see. But yeah, I think animation is doing really well. So I think this could definitely make a lot of money if they do it correctly, and they
Mm.
because obviously the game's got a very decent enough following. So I think that they could really go forth with that. But in terms of like the sequel to the game, like adapting that into a film, say wait and see. I guess
Yeah.
it's always worth waiting and seeing. If if they made a first film and they made a lot of
Mm.
money. But again,
Yeah,
we will
definitely. Yeah.
we will see. We will see if this film gets announced at some point. And again,
Here's
if it does,
hoping.
we dropped the scoop.
Yeah, exactly. It was us.
According to my sources, the same sources, and I'll say that in air quotes. And yeah, so yeah, but yeah, I think that's pretty much everything we covered for this potential film adaptation. But
Mm.
yeah, thank you so much for joining me, Alex. Do you
Oh
fancy
no,
coming?
it's been a pleasure.
Do you fancy coming back for another one at some point, or
Yeah, of course. Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, no problem. We'll make that happen. We'll make that happen.
All right,
Uh,
lovely.
yeah. But yeah, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in for today's podcast, and we'll see you whenever we see you next.
Thank you. Bye bye.